I need to get over to Imperial and get some coffee. I don't think I got any more coffee.
Pesach.
Yeah, just get some. I don't think I'd even need that when I'm just out in general. I think you can still get instant coffee, right? It doesn't need a hashgacha.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but I think I read that that's really not that important. But I do like that little red packet of Turkish coffee that they have.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go.
All right.
Share screen. Okay, so here we are. It's great to be learning Chassidus again in quarantine. Okay, so what's the so what are we talking about? The main point of the mimer, the discourse is discussing that Mashiach has two functions. He functions as a king, and he functions as a teacher. What is Mashiach as a king? It means that he'll give us an experience of Hashem which transcends our capabilities, a transcendent experience of Hashem. Just like a king is head and shoulders above the people, just like king is head and shoulders above the people, the same thing, Mashiach is head and shoulders above everybody, as well as even the way he decrees is in a way of aloofness. He tells you what to do. He doesn't explain to you what to do. And the same thing, Mashiach is going to give us things which are beyond us, like head and shoulders above us, basically, which we can't see, we can't understand, we can't comprehend. And he's going to let us experience Hashem in that way, which is completely transcending our faculties. So transcendent experience of Hashem. But also, he's going to give us an experience like a teacher, which will enhance our understanding, enhance our seeing of godliness. And that's like a teacher who lowers himself and explains himself to the student. The same Mashiach is going to do the same thing for us. But both of these things we prepare in the time of exile. So we prepare for the transcendent experience of Hashem by serving Hashem in a transcendent way. As he explained, that's the idea of netzach, of stubbornly serving Hashem, even when you don't feel it, you're not motivated, you'll do it anyway, because that's just the way it is. Mesiras nefesh, this is the way it is, there's no other option. And that enables us to experience a transcendent experience of Hashem, because that is a serving of Hashem which transcends ourselves. And then he explains, and that's what we're holding right now, how Mashiach, how what we do today is also going to prepare us for the revelation of Mashiach, which is going to enhance our understanding and seeing of godliness. And how does he do that? How do we do that? He says it based on what it says, that going into exile is like our soul coming into our body. Just like our soul coming down into our body is a yerida tzorech aliyah. It comes down in order to go up higher. The same thing, going into exile, we go down in order to go higher. That's yerida, again, yerida tzorech aliyah, that we go down in order to go higher. And he says that that happens with our soul, that happens in exile, that we go into exile to go even greater than we were before. And then he explains that also works in the general contraction of Hashem's light, in the diminishing of Hashem's light, called the tzimtzum. The same thing happens, that the tzimtzum is in order as well to go even higher. Okay. All right. So how do we do this? So he says it like this, is that the tzimtzum, the contraction of the light, affects the light in two ways. Let me share my screen already, because again, it'll be easier to, or just whiteboard. I can do a whiteboard, that's cool. All right, let's do a whiteboard. So we said like this, is that before the tzimtzum, before anything, Hashem filled the entire world. Why is it not writing? Oh, there we go. How do I undo that? Control. I'm not sure. Okay, that before Hashem created anything, Hashem's light filled the world, right? And what Hashem did is he made a big circle where he moved his light from inside that circle, and then he made a little line where he took from his light and he brought it into that circle, and that's where he created the world. So this big circle is an empty space where Hashem created everything, and around it, surrounding it is Hashem's light, the Igul HaGadol, the large circle, which is the infinite light, which is before any diminishing of the light, before any contraction, before anything. That's called the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. And then a little bit of that light he puts in a finite way, which becomes our existence. Which becomes our existence. Boker Tov. If you can't unmute, if you want to talk and you can't unmute yourself, so let me know so I can unmute you. Okay, so this is the way that the original Tzimtzum worked. He first removed his light and then he brought in a little bit of light. Here. So what does the Rebbe explain? That the Tzimtzum changed two things. Number one, it changed the light which is outside the circle, and number two, changed the light which is inside the circle. And in short, the way he changed the light which is outside the circle is he didn't change the light itself, because this light is beyond creation. So the light itself didn't change. But what did happen, it went back into its source. So now instead of revealing, it is hidden. That is that's the change that happened in the light which is outside the circle. So the light itself didn't change, but it's no longer revealed. And the light which came inside the circle actually changes until it actually goes into vessels where the light becomes like the vessel. That's a change that happens inside the vessel. The light which comes out inside through the Tzimtzum. And he says the same thing happens with our soul coming down into the body. There's a part of our soul which always remains above. There's a part of our soul with right now, today, part of me, a part of you, which is right now in heaven experiencing godliness in a way which only a soul in heaven can experience. Only a little part of the soul comes down into the body, into me, into you, into our consciousness. And also that part, so that's the first part. That's like the light which is outside the circle. It doesn't really change. But what happened is it no longer shines. It no longer shines into our existence. And then you have the light, the soul, which comes down into the body, which is like that little light that comes out into existence, where there the soul actually changes according to the body, where now it sees and experiences things based on what filtered through the body. That's the two ways that the soul is changed by coming down to the body. And the same thing is in exile, he says. There is the part that happened when Mashiach comes, which no longer happens at all. It's now hidden. That is seeing godliness. To be able to see Hashem, we can't see anything anymore. We don't see the miracles. We don't see the godliness that happened in times of Beis Hamikdash. We don't see. And what we do have, which is so that's just like the light which doesn't come into exile. And then you have the light which comes down, which is our understanding. And our understanding is also changed based on exile, where we can no longer understand godliness the way it was in the times of Beis Hamikdash. It's a lot more limited, a lot more finite, a lot less, and nothing compared to the understanding that we had in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. This is basically what he's said till now. Now, let me share this. Could everybody see the mimer?
I cannot.
You just still see the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me show you how to do this. Share. Let me share again. Now you see it?
Yeah.
All right, so let me get myself a spotlight. Okay, here we are. We're holding Vihini Yadua. We're holding Vihini Yadua right here, Vav. So after he explained the two different changes that happens in going into exile, that number one, part of what happened at the time of Beis Hamikdash doesn't even come down into exile because we no longer can see godliness. And number two is that way it changes, that now we understand a lot less, even though we still understand godliness, but it's a lot less than it was in the times of Beis Hamikdash. Now he goes into the next point, and that is explaining that the whole Tzimtzum was all in order to reveal. The whole point of Hashem hiding his light was not because he wanted to hide himself from us, but the opposite, because he wanted to reveal himself to us. And the only way he can reveal to us is if he has Tzimtzum. The only way Hashem can reveal himself to me and you is if he first hides his light. If you have something really, really bright, the sun, you want to look at it. Well, the only way to look at it, the only way to experience it is if you put on sunglasses, if you put on some protection. So the protection is not in order to hide the sun, it's actually in order to see the sun. But just that's the only way you can see it. The same thing is that me and you, in order for us to experience Hashem, or for that matter, in order for us to even to be created, to be able to experience anything, Hashem had to first hide his light. Then once Hashem hides his light, now we can exist. So the purpose of the tzimtzum is not in order to conceal, it's actually in order to reveal. And not just reveal, but actually to reveal the way the light was originally before the tzimtzum. To reveal to us the original light before the tzimtzum. And that's what he explains over here. It's a known thing, the kavanas tzimtzum, that the whole purpose of the tzimtzum that the infinite light should shine also in worlds. So the purpose of the tzimtzum is not just that we should exist, but the purpose of the tzimtzum is that light, that infinite light that transcended the circle, that was higher than the circle, should come into worlds, into our existence. The light of Hashem should be in this world, just like it was before creation. Before the tzimtzum, before Hashem diminished his light, when God's infinite light filled up that vacuum, that empty space, it was impossible to have worlds exist. Hashem's light was too strong that you couldn't have finite world. It couldn't exist. And if it couldn't exist, if the world couldn't exist, then of course you can't have the revelation in worlds. If you have no world to reveal into, then it can't be revealed. And what happened to the tzimtzum is chadish? This new novelty was what happened. That now the infinite light should be able to shine in worlds as well. Which of course this begs a question, which he's going to address a little later, which is if the infinite light, if the worlds could not have existed, if the infinite light was shining, then how do you reveal that infinite light once the worlds do exist? How could the worlds exist if Hashem is going to reveal that infinite light into the world? Right? It couldn't exist beforehand, that he had to remove his light completely. So what changed? Why all of a sudden before the infinite light, when you had the infinite light, you couldn't have worlds at all? And then once the worlds are there, the infinite light can shine in those worlds and they could still exist. So that's a question that we're going to answer later. Yeah, you got it. That's the question we're going to answer later. Yeah. But before that, he's going to explain a little deeper what this means. And the way he puts it is like this, that what is the difference between the infinite light before the tzimtzum, before the diminishing of the light, and the light that comes through the tzimtzum? And the way he puts it is like this. The difference is that before tzimtzum, Hashem was obvious. And the worlds were a chidush, were a novelty, were something different, were ischachus means that they were something new. But after the tzimtzum, it changes around. After the tzimtzum turns around, that now worlds are assumed, and the infinite light, that's already ischachus, that's already a novelty. Let's put this. You have different types. You have different people. Like you have this in very different ways. But let's say it's tzaddik, right? I'll put it differently. Wait, it says before. Did Adam Arishan, did Adam believe in Hashem? What would you say? If I'd ask you, did Moshe Rabbeinu believe in Hashem? What would you say? You'd say, of course, right?
They were speaking. They were
already
speaking.
There you go. There you go. They spoke to him. What do you mean they believed in him?
Moshe
Rabbeinu spoke to Hashem.
Well, Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Hashem, but Adam Harishon, who's known as the Adam Shlema, he's known as the perfect man. He's so perfect that he had the direct line. Chas v'shalom, anyone should be separate from the Eibishter in any way, but Adam Harishon had direct line to Hashem. Excuse me.
Very good. So, meaning that did Moshe, did Adam believe in Hashem? Well, they spoke to him. They didn't have to believe in him. They're just like we're speaking to each other. They spoke to Hashem.
Yeah.
By them, Hashem wasn't questionable. It wasn't like oh, maybe, yeah, maybe not, or any. They actually spoke to him.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, Hashem to them is real. That Hashem exists. That's definite. That's for sure. Now, if Hashem exists, then we have to figure out, okay, if Hashem exists, does the worlds really exist? Because if Hashem is for sure, then how did the worlds get into the picture? How do we exist? Well, we must have been created by Him. So we're the new novelty. We're the new kid on the block.
Mm-hmm.
But how does it work for most people? For most people, it's the opposite. For most people, our reality is what is. That is what we take for granted. And then Hashem, we have to figure out, oh, if I really exist, then does Hashem really exist? So Hashem to us is b'yischachus, is a novelty. Hashem is the novelty. Because I feel like I am. I feel like I exist. So now to figure out, well, if I exist, does Hashem really exist or not, right? And in that, Hashem becomes a novelty. I clearly know that I exist. And I also believe that Hashem exists. So I'm bipshitus. I simply believe that I am, but Hashem is the novelty. The other way, of course, is where Hashem is, you believe that Hashem simply, that's obvious, and we now are the novelty. But it works either way. If you believe Hashem, simply, if Hashem's existence is obvious to you, then you'll question how the worlds come into existence. It's like a story that they say that a chassid once meets his old friend, a misnagid or a non-chassid, and they get into discussion, and this non-chassid asks his friend, what did you learn? What changed when you became a chassid? What changed? So the chassid says, well, before, when I was a misnagid, before I learned chassidus, all I thought about was God. All I thought about was Hashem. And now that I'm learning chassidus, all I think about is myself. So basically, he says to you think about, you're constantly thinking about Hashem, and I'm constantly thinking about myself. So the guy gives a big smile, and on chassid, he says, okay, so what do you learn chassidus for? If now you're thinking all about yourself, what do you learn chassidus for? So the chassid says, I'll tell you, by you obviously exist. So you're constantly thinking, if I exist, then does Hashem really exist? Is it 100%? Am I 90% sure? What are the proofs? How do I know? He says, I started learning chassidus, right? And says, therefore, you think about Hashem all day because you're wondering if he really exists or not. He says, by me, I learned chassidus and I came to the realization that Hashem for sure exists. That's clear. That's obvious. Well, now I'm trying to figure out do I really exist? Do I not really exist? What's my existence if Hashem exists? And exactly what is my existence? Am I as real as I think I am? So all I think about all day is about myself.
So one guy is thinking Amuna Peshuta, just simple faith, where he doesn't question anything. He's not part of the question. But Hasidus teaches you not to have just Amuna Peshuta, even though that's very special too. But it tells you to have to look iyun, to look deeper, and then start to separate things and start to see how things are connected. And you see how things are connected, and that's the special part of the Kabbalahs of the Torah. Anyway.
Very good. So to take it one step further, is a lot of the discussion in Hasidus, if you learn Hasidus, a lot of the discussion is how exactly the worlds exist. In other words, a big part is that we don't really exist as much as we think we do. We're constantly dependent on Hashem, for instance. We're like a light in the sun, as it says in Shar Yichud V'Emunah, where essentially the whole thing that we call ourselves as a name of existence is not really true. Our existence is much less than we think it is.
You're teaching me something. The Maimer is saying that the Olamos, the worlds were a chiddush to Hashem, where there was something else, or his it was a different something. How's that?
So a chiddush, what we mean by a chiddush to Hashem is that if you take it from Hashem's perspective, what is obvious is that He is. Anything else that exists is a new kid on the block.
Okay.
It only exists because of Him. Meaning that's what hischachus means. It had to have been created. Hashem had to have made it to exist. Mm-hmm. Right? The things that from our perspective, it works the opposite. By us, it's obvious to us that we exist. Now, then what happens? So then Hashem becomes the hischachos. If I am, then Hashem is the novelty. And which is, of course, what happens is, you start growing older and you start learning about the existence of Hashem and everything. Okay. So that's what he says. That's be the difference between the way that we were when the Beis Hamikdash existed and the way we are now. In other words, in our service of Hashem, right? When it comes to me and you, what is the difference in somebody who believes who's by them, the Hashem is obvious and the world is a novelty, or the opposite, that the world is obvious and Hashem is a novelty? He says the difference of somebody who sees Hashem, somebody who understands Hashem. When you see Hashem, then Hashem is obvious. Like we said before about Adam, Moshe Rabbeinu. So what happened in the times of the Beis Hamikdash was that Hashem was obvious. Why? Hashem was obvious because they saw godliness. And when they saw godliness, Hashem was obvious and world was the novelty. As opposed to exile, it's the opposite. In exile, we are the existence, we are obvious, and now Hashem becomes the novelty. But then he says a step further, and that is, he says, in truth, only when Mashiach comes is it going to be in that real sense that Hashem is obvious and the world's a novelty. And the reason for that is if the existence of Hashem, the revelation of Hashem is only in a certain time, a certain place, or for certain people, then it still means that Hashem is not as obvious as the world is. So let's say, if only prophets see Hashem, then yes, for them, Hashem is a lot more obvious. For them, it's funny. For them, Hashem is a lot more obvious, right? But it's not as obvious as the world is, because by the revelation of prophecy is only on a few people, and everybody can see the world. And the same thing would apply is if you only see godliness in the Beis Hamikdash, then it's not as obvious. Then it's not as obvious as that Hashem is not as obvious as the world is. Because if you have to go to the Beis Hamikdash in order to see God, I don't have to go to the Beis Hamikdash to see the world. And only when Mashiach comes, where it says when Mashiach comes, everybody's going to be a prophet. And now that we're going to be able to see God with our own physical eyes, wherever we are, in every place and every time, that's when Hashem is going to be completely obvious. Again, going back to the way it was before the Tzimtzum. Just like before the Tzimtzum, Hashem was obvious and the world was the novelty. That's going to happen in its truest sense when Mashiach comes. And that's what we're going to do now in Vav and Zayin. So let's go a little bit inside, even though we're running out of time. Here we go. I'll be able to understand this by prefacing, which is known concerning the concealment that happens through the tzimtzum, the fact that the infinite light was hidden and went back into its source. The that before the tzimtzum, before the contraction of the light, when Hashem's infinite light filled these vacuum, this empty space, where in that time before he took away his light, where his infinite light shined into the empty space. And that point, godliness was obvious, and existence, mitzias, anything existing, not just worlds, but any existence at all, was a novelty. Or for that matter, there was no real existence because it was prior to existence. So in that point, at that time, Hashem, godliness was obvious. Godliness was obvious, and existence was a novelty. By the Siluk Rabban Hashem removed his light. That's changed. Now, some mitzias b'pshitos after the tzimtzum, in that empty space, now existence is obvious. And now Hashem, godliness, is the novelty. What are these two things in the service of Hashem? You have various different levels where you have this difference where God is obvious and the world's a novelty, or the opposite, right? We talked about before about a tzaddik and a regular person, but there's different ways of this. And he says, and generally, the difference would be is seeing godliness and understanding godliness. When you understand godliness so strong that it's as if you see, even if it's seeing with the with the wisdom. In your mind's eye. Especially if you're a prophet and you see godliness in the literal sense, not just you see godliness with your mind's eye, but you see Hashem literally. So then, hayidiyah, the knowledge that you have of Hashem is obvious. You don't need any proof. Like we said before, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses doesn't need any proof that Hashem exists. Moshe doesn't need any proof because he talked to him. It's obvious to him. He sees him. And the same thing with other missions, the same thing with all the prophets. But when somebody knows godliness, not because he sees Hashem, but only because he understands Hashem, that becomes a novelty. Then Hashem is a novelty, which of course is most people. Most people, we don't understand God because we see him. We know Hashem because we understand him. We learned about him. We were told about him. And in that case, our existence is obvious and Hashem's existence becomes the novelty. But he says even more, so that's in a general sense, the difference between a prophet and a regular person. You go more specifically, where will you have the true level that Hashem will be obvious is when Mashiach comes. And you're not going to have it as much as you will have when Mashiach comes. As opposed to now, even the revelation of prophecy, when a prophet sees Hashem with his eyes, it's still in a way of a novelty. Why? Because he says that when it comes to physical things, you don't need to be a special person. When it comes to seeing physical matter, every person, you don't have to be any tzaddik or any holy person or any spiritual person, anybody and everybody can see the physical matter. There is no there's no big deal about it. That to see physicality, like, whoa, that guy's able to see the physical matter, right? You don't make a big deal of it. When it comes, when you say, oh wow, that guy's a prophet, right? It meaning that it's not a regular thing, it's not a normal thing to be a prophet. It's something different. So even prophecy, even a prophet, the world is obvious, and his prophecy is a chidush, is a novelty. It's not working, okay?
So that would make prophecy a chiddush itself.
Correct. Even to the prophet. So again, you're going layers and layers of levels. So by a prophet, Hashem is a lot more obvious than it is to a regular person. That's clear. But even to a prophet, you can't say that seeing Hashem is as obvious as seeing physical matter. Because when he opens his eyes, what does he see? He sees tables, chairs, existence. And once in a while, he gets to see Hashem also. So, and not only that, the person next to him on his right and the person next to him on his left don't see Hashem. So notice he's something unique. That's ischatros. That's a novelty. He's a novelty. He's not the regular thing. Why? Because prophecy only rests on somebody else, only on somebody who's incredibly wise, and wisdom, and strong with his midas, with his character traits, etc. As Maimonides, as the Rambam says. So in other words, the regular person isn't a prophet. So meaning even prophecy is a novelty. The same thing is the seeing of godliness, which is seeing through the mind's eye. Through our wisdom, you have that same issue, that it's only by specific individuals, by special individuals, meaning it's not as obvious as seeing the world. Any prophetic vision today, and he means today by in all existence as we know it since creation until today, all prophetic knowledge is in a way of a novelty. It's a chidush. It's not obvious. I mean, that's when we say, wow, that guy's a Navi. That guy's a prophet. We don't say it about anybody and everybody. Say, whoa, that guy's a tzaddik. That guy's a prophet. Meaning it's unique. It's not obvious. That's because the revelation that we have today, also prophetic vision, it all comes from, as we had that picture before, right? It all comes from the line, which is after the tzimtzum. What was that?
Diminishing light, correct? It's coming from
light, yes.
Yeah, that's where the connection is coming for to make Nivua. It's
That's
coming
where
from
the
the
prophetic vision comes from.
Yep.
In other
Okay.
words, it's the light that goes through the tzimtzum and it gets contracted and diminished and everything until it comes into the Navi's eye. So we might be at the very tip, the very, very bottom of that line. A Navi is a little higher, but it's all going through that line, which get changed to the tzimtzum. And therefore, as long as you're in this line, Hashem is not as obvious anymore. As we said before, over here, Hashem is obvious and world and existence is a novelty. But over here, it's the opposite. So as long as you're in that line, Hashem is not going to be as obvious as before. As a prophet also gets his prophecy from that line. And therefore, he's not going to have that Hashem be obvious as much as was before. Charlie, I'm almost done there. I can put on your shoes, okay? But when Mashiach comes, what will happen then is that this infinite light, which transcends the tzimtzum, is now going to shine in the circle. And when that happens, then prophecy will be as natural as everything else. It'll be a natural thing. It's going to be on every single person. Even on children, boys and girls, I'll be able to see godliness. As it says, I will pour my spirit on every flesh. And even your children, your sons and daughters are going to prophesy. Why? Because then when Hashem's light is filling the circle, then Hashem is going to be obvious to everybody and anything. And it's not like going to be like, oh, you can see physical matter, but I have to search for spiritual, for godliness. You'll be able to see God just like you see the physical matter. And that's the shchidush. That what is going to happen. Mashiach comes, it's going to transform everything completely, that no longer is existence going to be the obvious. And Hashem going to be the novelty, is going to be the opposite. Why? Because we're no longer going to get from the kav. We're no longer get from the light which goes through the tzimtzum. It gets changed by the tzimtzum. We're going to start getting from the light which is above and beyond the tzimtzum. Is going to shine once again in the circle, and therefore we're going to have that infinite light shining in each and every one of us.
Amen. Salah.
What was that?
Amen. Salah.
Yeah. Amen. Very good.
A wonderful class. Wonderful class.
Thank you. So I guess we'll stop here. We'll continue, God willing, Sunday 9:00.
Bezras Hashem. Thank you so much.
The 9:00 class will be an hour. The weekday classes are a half hour for now. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi Yossi. Welcome, Yitzchak. Thanks, Gabe.